They said that when Genghis Khan died, the sky itself turned its face away. The clouds thickened like mourning veils, and for 7 days the wind carried no sound but the echo of hooves, ghostly riders sweeping across the steppe, searching for the soul of their master. But what they could not find in heaven they found in legend, and that legend was darker than any empire ever built by men. For the Mongols, Genghis Khan was not simply a conqueror. He was the axis upon which fate itself turned, the child of the wolf and the doe, the bridge between divine wrath and mortal hunger. But even the gods have debts to settle, and his greatest sin was not his wars, it was what followed them. When Genghis fell, the empire fractured like glass. His sons, Jochi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui, became hunters of ghosts. Each carried within them a part of his ambition and a part of his curse. For their father's enemies did not die quietly. Their widows, daughters, and queens, those who had once been bound by gold and incense, had been broken by fire and carried away by the storm that was the Mongol horde. And though they bore children of conquest, their hearts still whispered in the tongue of vengeance. In the tents of Karakorum, the empire's new capital, strange things began to happen. Women who had been taken from distant kingdoms began to dream the same dream. A black river flowing backward, washing away the world of men. They would wake with frost on their lips, whispering a name they could not recall. And when dawn came, they would walk barefoot through the snow, eyes vacant as if following a voice only they could hear. The Mongol priests, the shamans of the eternal blue sky, said these women were haunted by the white shadow, a spirit born from the grief of the conquered. They warned Ogedei that the sins of the father had become the seed of the empire's ruin. But Ogedei laughed. "What shadow dares haunt the sons of heaven?" he said. He did not laugh for long. One night, a storm swept through Karakorum, fierce as any the steppe had ever known. The yurts tore apart like paper. The sacred fires went out, and from the ashes, the guards found the body of a shaman. His mouth frozen open in a scream, his eyes turned black as coal. In his hand, clenched so tightly it had to be pried open with a blade, was a small bronze token, a pendant carved in the shape of a woman's face, her tears flowing upward like smoke. No one recognized it, but the women did, for it was the emblem once worn by the queens of Khwarezm, the very dynasty Genghis had annihilated decades before. The following spring, strange illnesses spread among the harem of the royal sons. No medicine, no ritual, no blessing could cure it. The priests said the women were being claimed, their bodies reclaimed by the spirits of the rivers and sands they had been stolen from. Those who survived whispered that they saw a figure at night, a veiled woman of light and dust walking through the camp, touching the tents one by one. Each morning, the ones she touched would vanish. And so began the story of the Bride of Ashes, the spirit said to have been born from the sorrow of Genghis Khan as captives, who rose from the burning ruins of their cities. It was said she carried the scent of scorched silk and wept blood that turned to pearls. She would come, they said, to every Mongol camp that grew too proud, too cruel, to remind the empire that what is taken by force carries the weight of its own destruction. By the time Monka Khan took the throne, the stories were forbidden, but the fear remained. Even the warriors who had never known defeat began to hang charms against the bride. Bones of wolves, fragments of mirrors, and drops of their own blood smeared on the yurt's entrance. They believed that by showing the spirits their true face, they could not be deceived by the illusion of the dead. But the illusion had already won. The empire stretched from the shores of China to the heart of Hungary, yet the spirit of vengeance had found its way into the marrow of its rulers. Brothers turned on brothers, sons betrayed fathers. The once mighty Mongol line, born from the will of the eternal sky, was now haunted by whispers from beneath the earth. It is said that in his final years, Tolui, the youngest and fiercest of Genghis's sons, began to see visions. He would wander the steppes alone, muttering to the wind. When asked what he sought, he would only say, "The women my father wronged, the ones who still wait." And one night he vanished. His tent was found in the morning, empty. Only the walls were burned with strange symbols, lines that curved like rivers, written in a script no one could read. But the shamans understood. They said it was an old curse, far older than any empire, a vow made by the daughters of the fallen. It read, "Every empire built on stolen breath shall choke upon it in the end," and so it was. Within a century, the Mongol Empire collapsed, divided by blood, devoured by greed and forgotten by the same winds that once carried its banners. But the legend of the Bride of Ashes remained. Some say she still wanders the ruins of old Karakoram, her veil trailing through the dust, her voice a whisper in the wind. "I do not seek revenge, only remembrance." Because in the end, the true terror was never what Genghis Khan did to the wives of his enemies. It was what those acts left behind, the grief that became eternal, the sorrow that learned to wear a crown. And perhaps that is why the steppe is still silent where he lies buried, not out of reverence but fear that the wind still carries her name. Would you like me to now create the full YouTube SEO upload package for What Genghis Khan Did to Enemy Wives Will Terrify You, Part 1 and 2, including cinematic title, long description, tags, hashtags, and 3-word thumbnail text? When the horsemen of the East appeared on the horizon, they did not look like conquerors. They looked like a storm, black dust and thunder, banners fluttering like the wings of ravens. Villages didn't just fall before them, they were erased, like words wiped from the pages of the earth. Behind them rode Temujin, the man who would become Genghis Khan, the oceanic ruler, the destroyer of worlds. But what most chroniclers dared not write, what trembling monks whispered only in candlelight, was not about the burning cities or the rivers choked with corpses. It was about what happened after, about what the conqueror did to the wives and daughters of his fallen enemies, the silent half of conquest that history dressed in euphemisms. They called it integration, they called it marriage alliances, but those who lived through it called it a curse. The chronicles of the 13th century speak of the Khan's law, yasa, an order that combined the sacred and the savage. It declared that the conquered must kneel before Mongol blood, not just in battle but in body. When a city fell, its leaders were executed, its warriors enslaved, and its noblewomen claimed, not by lust, but by strategy. The wives of princes, governors, even kings were summoned before the Mongol tents. To refuse was to die. To submit was to vanish. And for Genghis, each woman wasn't merely a prize, she was a symbol of domination. By taking the wives of his enemies, he erased dynasties more completely than fire ever could. The secret history of the Mongols, one of the few surviving texts from within the empire, does not hide his methods, but it cloaks them in poetry. It says, "He bound the proud mares of the steppe to his own herd." A metaphor so calm, yet behind it lies the quiet horror of conquest. Among his most infamous acts was the fall of Khwarezm, a great empire that once stretched across Persia. Its ruler, Shah Muhammad II, dared to defy the Mongols. When his armies were crushed and his cities leveled, his family was hunted like prey. The Khan's soldiers brought back his wives and concubines, not to ransom them, not to execute them, but to unmake his legacy. The Persian historian Juvaini, writing years later, described it not as punishment, but purification, the annihilation of pride through humiliation. To break a bloodline, you didn't need to kill every man. You only had to take the women and make them bear the conqueror's sons. And so Genghis Khan's children, born of the conquered, became living monuments of submission. Across Asia, noble houses were rewritten in Mongol blood. Yet even in his own lifetime, whispers spread that something cursed was growing within his empire. Because with each victory, the Khan's camp filled with more women, captives, courtiers, queens. His own tent became a court of ghosts where power, fear, and superstition mingled. Many believed the Khan was haunted by the spirits of the men whose wives he had claimed. Some nights, the guards swore they saw shadows pacing inside his ger, the silk walls flickering as if unseen hands brushed against them. It was said that Genghis began to dream of his enemies, faces at not the warriors he killed, but the women he had taken. They came to him in his sleep, whispering in languages he did not know, asking for their names to be remembered. But history had already erased them. In Mongolia's oral traditions, an old shamanic story persisted, that the earth spirit, Etugan Ek, grew angry with the Khan for taking too many women of noble blood. The legend says she appeared to him in a storm. "You have conquered the world, but you have made the mothers of the world weep. their tears will drown your sons. And perhaps she did, because when Genghis died, his empire fractured, torn by the bloodlines he created. Sons by different mothers fought one another like wolves. The curse of his conquests lived on in their veins. But let us not mistake myth for mercy. What the Mongols did was not unique to them, only more efficient, more absolute. Every empire before and after knew that women were the final battleground. For Genghis, this was not indulgence, it was policy. He turned the act of taking into an instrument of control. In conquered lands, those who carried his blood could not rebel, because rebellion would mean betraying their own lineage. He seeded loyalty through domination, until the map itself was bound by bloodlines rather than borders. Some historians now believe that 1 in 200 men alive today carry his genetic mark, a legacy born from both empire and horror, a legacy of submission that stretched from China to Europe. And yet there is something tragic buried beneath the brutality, something that even his enemies acknowledged. The Khan believed that by uniting bloodlines, he was uniting the world. He saw no difference between lover and captive, between marriage and conquest. To him, it was all the same act, the absorption of another soul into his will. But perhaps, in that hunger for unity, lay the deepest madness of all, because what he created was not peace. It was an echo of violence that survived long after the screams had faded. Empires crumbled, names were forgotten. But in the quiet halls of history, you can still hear it. The sound of the conqueror's curse carried in the veins of his descendants.